Hi, everybody. It's another day of headlines with Ron. Where today there's some really good ones. I think I can add some good context to, and I think it's important because these headlines are very alarmist, and I think the media likes to present that to us because it keeps us tuning in to check if the world is still there tomorrow. So I suspect it will be. So the first thing we have is this interesting thing: escalating militia attacks on U.S. troops risk Washington-Tehran confrontation. There's an armed drone apparently from Iran hitting, or supported by Iran, hitting the barracks in Iraq. The underlying all this is the idea that there could be the perception from America's adversaries, let's say, that America is overtaxed, overstretched with trying to support the wars in Ukraine against Russia, Russia against Ukraine, and now the situation in Israel and Hamas, especially in that war. Public opinion in the United States and in the West seems very loud. Maybe they're thinking that the public opinion will not allow the politicians to support more wars, and that America's overstretched and deeply in debt and not interested in participating. So this feeling could cause adversaries like Iran and especially China. Now's a great time for China to do its thing, make its move, while America is stretched thin, apparently, and that's what underscores these kind of headlines. That's why it's important. It's not just a random terrorist thing that could have happened anytime in 20 years. It's happening now. Excuse me. Okay, one of the most interesting countries, and this is one I think it's good to look at what's behind it. You know, we have Putin's move to secure Libya bases, this new regional challenge for U.S. European allies. This has to do, we've talked about this as well, the new axis of powers that has been forming, firming up to oppose the Western liberal democracies. You know, we have Russia has been isolated by their war in Ukraine. It seemed like Russia was surprised that they were so quickly and entirely isolated. Certainly from the Russian perspective, they thought that since they were supplying all this natural gas into Europe, that Europe would not have a lot of room to just cut off the supply. And from the other side, see, from the Western democracies, we all thought that by sending hundreds of millions of dollars a month to Russia and interweaving our economies in this way, that Russia would not do anything to upset the order of the international order. However, you could see from the opposite way, Russia thought interweaving those economies, that interdependence that we've tried to foster with these semi-autocratic states, that interweaving makes those states think, hey, we can do what we want, and the other side has no choice but to accede. They wouldn't dare stand up against it. So Russia was caught off guard. They've been isolated. They've been getting warmer with Iran, with Hamas itself, with China, with North Korea, and now with Libya. So Russia is being forced into this other role. Now, in Libya, we have, I believe it's still two major factions. It's changed a lot. The U.S. really uncorked a world of horror there by overthrowing the government in 2011. Was it George Bush again, another foreign war? No, it was Obama. So after 8 years of screaming about how wars are bad, because they kill people, innocent people can die, first thing we have is the new president gets in, and he has a sort of, it's not a necessary war, sort of like Iraq was. It was one that they said, hey, we can do this. And it uncorked a bottle. And, Libya, Gaddafi had long said, you got to have me in here. You got to accept me. Or we blow the top off it and you'll have extreme Islamists in there. And since then, it's been a disaster. Even at one point, the U.S. ambassador was killed by a mob. in that country. So, and before I go on, the interesting thing, I don't know if anybody ever writes or talks about this, but so you might wonder, you go all the way back to the Reagan administration in the 80s. Just every few years, the United States would just bomb Libya. It's an easy country to bomb. So why is that? First reason is Libya's radical Gaddafi thing. This cult is a cult of personality. It was like a Maoist thing. He had I think it was a little green book, the self-sufficiency thing, which is always a doom for any economy. So he was so radical and crazy, even in the Soviet Union days, he couldn't be, nobody wanted to get that close to him, even that Pole. So hitting him was not like hitting a proxy state of the Soviet Union or communists or something. That was the first thing. Second thing is population, and this is interesting. Libya is one of those places where a lot of it would be wasteland, meaning that it's not a place where a lot of people would want to be. I guess like Somalia, southern part of Somalia. So the population in Libya, I looked it up. I remember it was 9 million. It says 7 million people. And of those people, of that, I believe like most of them, 90% are within 100 or 150 miles of the coast, which means all the population centers are there, the cities. Why don't you, as a comparison, look at Egypt right next door, over 100 million people there, and they're scattered through population centers all the way down the Nile and big cities. It's a lot more developed. So Libya is a place because of its politics and because of the population and the way it's there. It's an easy country for somebody to come in off the Mediterranean and just bomb a little bit. So they were kind of a whipping boy. And they were also caused a lot of trouble too with harassing foreign terrorism, harassing shipping in their big Gulf there. So this is a country that has continued to be a problem, and like I say, it was a surprise when the U.S. took over this country. Decided to topple the government, and I don't want to blame Obama entirely. I'm quite sure, I would put a bet on this, that it was the influence of Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State. They certainly, the Clintons during their time as presidency, they had an active foreign policy in terms of being in some overseas tussles and being out of some other ones. In many ways, they very much continued on they very much continued on the policies of the Reagan administration. And I can't say I was totally against what the Clintons did in office. They had a very internationalist bent, and when the U.S. went into Libya, I can't say I was opposed to it either, but it was a mistake. You did have. Reagan got away with some interventions, making the U.S. and himself look good. Certainly George W. Bush, the first one George H.W. Bush did in his first attack back in Iraq. But it gets to a point and you win some and you lose some. And certainly the second George W. Bush in the 2000s, there were a lot of missteps. And looking back in Iraq, they took the cork off of a lot of problems, and then they after all of that screaming and yelling about killing people and George Bush in his time, Obama got right in there and fell right in the same trap of going into Libya. So Libya continues to be a place to watch. Here we have lots more protesters screaming terrible things, and I don't know. Obama refuses to pick sides. Nobody's hands clean. It's a Daily Mail one. Usually they would set this up to make it seem like as kind of a worse for the left-leaning or Democratic side. I don't know. I don't know. He's got Libya to answer for, I suppose. Lots of more things about that. We talked about Erdogan yesterday. Turkey, again, that's an emerging power. A lot of changes going on right now in the international order that have come up. So here we go. Here's something a little less, I don't know if it's less dire or more dire. Here we have Trump leading in 5 swing states. We have, I saw these states. What were the states? This is the one okay. Trump margins of 3 to 10 percentage points in Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, and Pennsylvania. Now, these things can change a lot. And it'd be interesting, for the foes of Trump, it seems like the more trouble they get him into, the more popular he becomes. That might have not been the case in other times, but now is a time of polarization, and with each side being very distrustful of the other side. And the one I wanted to mention here was Wisconsin. Biden had only 2 percentage points. This was one of the states that won Trump the presidency unexpectedly in 2016 and was sort of seen as the hubris of the Hillary Clinton campaign. I don't believe that they campaigned there towards the end because they thought it was in the bag. It had always gone Democratic, and this was one of the shock situations in that election campaign. Iowa governor endorses DeSantis. You see, I would read this and say, Iowa is one of the early. All these different, there's caucuses and primary elections because the parties can run and the states can run their elections in any way they want. And Iowa was always, if not the first, or maybe it was the second, I can't remember. I think they had some other little poll in another small state. And Iowa was one of the first ones and the bellwether state for many, many decades. And then maybe 20 years ago, all the states said, hey, we'll just move ours sooner and, and get more attention in the press, as opposed to being one of the primary states months away that by that time it's already decided. So then it caused a free-for-all. So I don't even know which one's the first one. But as you see here, Iowa is still sort of seen as a first bellwether. It's important to win in this state. If you ever want to look it up, it's a very interesting way they do caucuses. Like all the people in an area who are voters, you go into this big room, and then there's certain guys or women who stand in each of the corners, and they say they're supporting them, and then you actually physically walk over to there. It's like a very old-timey way of doing it. And all the U.S. states are littered with those very idiosyncratic ways of electing in the primaries. So what I was going to start to say here, when I see this, obviously DeSantis has stumbled and fallen and looked very foolish in his early campaign efforts, despite having seemingly being the right kind of guy to unseat Trump. So as someone who is seen as sort of a completely fallen politician who probably shouldn't be running, for this to happen, this shows there's things behind the scenes in the Republican Party that says, in public, we may have to say that we like Trump, but is not really the right person to have in there. Too mercurial, too crazy acting, too many unforced errors. And so this is a behind the scenes, what they used to call the smoke-filled rooms, like in the late 19th century. I would think that they're saying, okay, we need to decide on someone else and get behind him. And so it's a little unusual because DeSantis is kind of messed up so far in his campaigning. More about Trump here. There's something about the U.S. soldiers overseas, something of the way the bombs are dropped and they're around them. It causes perhaps concussive problems in their brain, and they come home and they see ghosts and visions and stuff. This is a scary thing about war. It's not all fun and games. I only say that because when I was growing up, my formative time was in the 80s, and there were all these kind of anti-Vietnam War movies, Full Metal Jacket, Apocalypse Now, late 70s, Platoon, and I knew the message was they were supposed to show me that war was a terrible thing. But I just thought, gosh, that sounds like fun. I mean, I wouldn't want to be on the front lines, but to be over there, to travel, to be that exotic, chaotic situation, I don't know. Probably a fool. Once you get over there and you're in fear of your life, you would be running. So, stuff about Bezos, more things about people wanting to get on the school board. I don't know. I have a little experience in dealing with local officials. I don't know what kind of personality it takes to want that sort of trouble, having to listen to a bunch of crazy local people on every side of the issue and pretend like you care. So, I don't know. And more about DeSantis, more about people maybe running. Florida pastor accused of using belt on students at private religious school. Probably need more of that. Here's something all about all the books. Brittany, 417,000. Wouldn't it be something to sell even a fraction of that? And so it's the perfect time to show you about my book. This is my novel of Bangkok life. It's a novel. It's a work of literature. It's talking about the internal struggles and aspirations of young people from overseas coming here to work, and Thais as well who are living in a changing metropolis. So it's on Kindle. It's on Amazon. It'd be great if somebody wants to wants to buy it, and please let me know if you like it or not. Hopefully you do. So that was the book interlude. Here we have the anti-Semitism at historic levels, tsunami of hatred in Australia. Who would have thought? I would have never imagined that we've gotten to this, but for various reasons, and I have talked about them in past weeks, we're in an interesting situation. And if you're Israel, you see what that interesting situation is. The war here with Hamas, I would say it really isn't anything new, nothing that's happened in many, many decades past. It's been a sort of perpetual state of conflict, maybe at least a couple times a decade and around all of the borders. But this time, I think really the first time where Western liberal democracies seems to be a sizable amount of people who are not supporting Israel. So that's the different thing in this Hamas and Israel equation. Not just that they're fighting. They have been for a long time. John Fetterman, tech giants jockeying for position at dawn of AI age. I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know. I kind of hope it goes away or it becomes something like NFTs. They have to find the app. They have to get it integrated maybe into your phone. But I don't want some AI thing with access to my data. I don't know. I wonder, and I'm very often behind the times on this, so I may be wrong. But when I want to know something on the internet, I don't want to look up this or that. I just want to go to Google. I'll type it in and look at it, and I'll look at the sources myself. It's what sort of this channel is about, where we're talking about different sources, and sometimes if they're right or left leaning, the context. I really don't want to cede that all to AI, which is just an amalgamation, an average of everything that's out there already. I don't know. What's better than sex and weed? Nah, that sounds like something from Hollywood, doesn't it? More on the Hollywood actors strike. Here we have this poor guy who was dressed up as a woman and he killed himself. That's really sad. As I said, I'd say it again. I don't know. You may be conservative or you maybe not understand all this, but I think most people are for liberty, and as long as a person wants to do something, I don't know why they should be shamed for it in most cases. too bad this guy felt he had to kill himself, especially now in this day and age where things 100% wilder than that are accepted. So, Phoenix clears out 15-block homeless encampment. These are things that have grown up in, I don't know, the last 4 years. The media won't say most of the media won't say it's the president's fault, but they have, local cities have changed a lot of laws and have allowed a lot of forbearance to rule breaking that they maybe would have, that cities maybe were overly litigious with, or they would be very quick to arrest people over things you might think are not right. But now we've gone to the other extreme, and there has to be some snapback against something like this. I don't know. Maybe it's necessary. Maybe they need more public housing. I don't know. I wouldn't want to be at the city level and have to sort all this out. Why banks suddenly closing down customer accounts? I don't know. Well, I think that's the news for today. I think some of the things we talked about shows how important it is to understand or just have some sense of the context of some of these things, because we're in an interesting little turning point right now, and it's only going to get more interesting. So please stay tuned for tomorrow, and we'll have more interesting headlines and context and commentary from me, Ron. Bye-bye. See you next time.